through the agenda in a moment. One big announcement is that I will be leaving the Workforce Development Board at the end of July to attend law school. Abby is going to transition into my role, and we'll figure out how to kind of backfill her position as well. But we let other folks know via email this week, but I wanted to let you all know in person, obviously, since we were going to be meeting on Friday. So it's been a pleasure, and I have loved all this work, but I'm looking forward to the next chapter. Thanks, Carla. So with that big announcement, I will have Abby just run through the agenda for today.
Great. So as you all probably received an email from me a little while ago, we're going to get an update from VMEC today with Carla. I know Marianne, in regards to the talent pipeline, cannot make it today, but they've been coordinating their efforts. So Carla's going to be giving us a brief update. And then we're going to start addressing some of the milestones that we have in our strategic plan that we have lined out as the first upcoming milestones that we're wanting to hit within the next few months. So that being just highlighting October National Manufacturing Month coming up and what we're going to be doing as a committee to highlight, collaborate any of those events that are ongoing. And then just briefly starting to touch on this marketing campaign that we all have been discussing and thinking about some of the core principles that we're wanting to get across to folks that are going to be reached in this marketing campaign. So I think with that, I'll hand it over to Carla if she just wants to give us an update.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you. Sure. So many of you were either part of or privy to the work that we started as Vermont Talent Pipeline Management for the manufacturing sector was transitioned over to VMEC. So Marianne is focusing on nursing. I'm focusing on manufacturing, so that makes sense. So when we came out of the session in January, we are continuing all along to, I'm going to share my screen, which is why I'm pausing, all along to the three calls to action around the manufacturing sector. One is really telling the story. Second is leveraging our resources. And third is taking a step together. And just making it a little bit bigger for you. And so an update on that, if you think about what was gathered throughout January and beyond, we think about our roles in this pipeline from career awareness and guidance all the way to retention. I would also say there's another one after that, which is succession planning and so forth. And so there's a lot of things that came up as things are going well, things that we leverage, and we wanted to continue there. So that's the summary from January's event. Obviously, there was a lot of paper. You recognize some of your handwriting or my handwriting or somebody else's handwriting. And the response really is to get a regional focus and a statewide coordination, not to be duplicative, competing or extra. And making sure that we're using an appreciative inquiry. We're really kind of moving things forward and in a team, like thinking about who is going to be on the team when we're moving forward so that we can get things done. So one of the kind of primary activities that came out of that as well was, are we leveraging our CTEs most effectively? If we're trying to have this regional approach, we know that we have RDCs and CTEs and other entities that are kind of regional. Obviously, the manufacturers themselves are in a region, and they oftentimes pull workforce from that region. So what we've learned with working with those CTEs, so again, focused activity, trying to move that ball forward, the CTEs being the career and technical education centers around the state, which are noted here on the little dots flag. And little flags. And so we have this by CTE and by instructor or director. And this is really, they recognize that like 8 of the 10 of them that we got information from back and forth don't really understand if they're hitting the need or meeting the need. Either the answer was like, no, we're not meeting the need, or I don't know. The other thing was that, some of them had strong boards, but maybe weren't asking this question or being, engaging in this way. And 3 of them recognized that their engagement was not strong. So there was strong engagement, maybe not working on this. So interesting. And then out of the ones that, again, we were able to get some information back and forth on, 6 of them provided specifics about how manufacturers could help, either by providing different kinds of resources, providing opportunities. So some of the things that might be short experiences at the company, for instance, for their students, and or internships that are a little longer, things like that. So next up, some people ask specifically, hey, VMEC, will you be on our board? Of course. Yes. And then, or other manufacturers as well. So making sure that we have some strong representation. Things that also have been happening is working at the state level to understand what are the requirements at the state level and guidance at the state level to kind of strengthen those CTEs across the board. So that's what has been going on in that focused regional approach for 2023 around strengthening the CTEs. Some of the other things, this is what we've learned. There's been a lot of things we've done with respect to, with equipment, tooling, guidance, things like that, visits, and so forth. So that's what I have there. Any questions about that? Comments?
Carla, can you share the presentation?
Am
that
I
you
not
just
sharing
gave?
it?
No. Can you email it out after the meeting?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot in the presentation, but it's a working doc, but yes.
No, that's fine. It just helps me keep on track what we're doing in the state, and then and I'm sure Chris is filled you in on the NERDIC.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So just and letting the workforce team from NERDIC kind of see where we're at as well.
Of course, yeah. Anything. There's nothing here except a lot of stuff which I'm not going to share with you because it's like a working doc. That's you would go like, what is this? Yeah, I'll absolutely. And of course, preparing for the manufacturing day, I think primarily around making sure that people know the manufacturing day is happening, make sure they know how to get, open their doors, what some ideas are around doing that, and then helping coordinate events, things like that. VMEC and Vermont Talent Pipeline Management are definitely available and encouraging in that realm. Great. And I'll be at the generator next week, right? Or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something. It's on the calendar.
Any questions for Carla?
Anything you didn't see that you wish you had seen?
I feel like it is, I would love, I know it's a working document, but if there's parts of it or all of it that you could share, it's really helpful to like keep us on track too, because there's so much to do in the state, right? Yeah, so that's awesome that you've done on that.
Yeah, and I think just on that mode, like some of the things that are in there are things like we're connecting with organizations like Generator, like the American Precision Museum. All right, so they're doing some great stuff over there. How do we? Oh, Steve, hi. Are you?
How we doing?
Are you Steve? Steve? Are you Steve?
I'm Steve.
From? Oh, hi! Yay! I haven't met you yet, not in person, but in real time. So working with finding out ways in which we can take the awesome that's happening there, and if it's something that can be, instead of starting from scratch, how do we inject, implant, whatever, that somewhere else, resources, instead of having to do it from scratch, right? So yes, let's figure that out.
Carla,
And I'll
are
be a
you-
broken,
Oh,
oh,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Ashley.
I was just gonna say, I'll be a broken record and keep harping on my regional collaboration and how we have a lot of resources available from states that have done this. And I'm sure Chris has kept you up to date, Carla, but in Massachusetts and Connecticut, who have already had very strong manufacturing marketing campaigns that are willing to provide some best practices. And so we don't have to start over. Obviously, we have to localize them to our needs in Vermont. But there are things out there where us not necessarily having the resources that some of our other neighbors have, and the legislature as much legislature support and money going towards these things, that there are
Yep.
our friends nearby that are
Yeah.
willing to help us out and have done a really great job.
Yes. So on the leveraging resources, I think that's huge. I think we need to make sure that we're all on, we start doing some work today about what is that marketing campaign going to look like? What are the key points there that we're going to be able to move forward? And then also, on the manufacturing month thing, that's just a piece of it, right?
Yeah. And I'd
Okay.
say one of the most eye-opening things that happened at our last NERDIC quarterly meeting at Berkshire Innovation Center was we had a panel from GD Mission Systems, and they had small suppliers sitting on that panel. And in the audience, we had Apex accelerators, economic development leaders, other people from MEPs, workforce, and all the people in the audience were kept saying, well, we have this resource, we have this resource. And none of these tiny suppliers knew that any of these resources existed. Neither did GD. So my question to them was, where do you find your information? And that's, I think, one of our biggest hurdles is not necessarily getting out to the current manufacturers, but as well as creating that pipeline of workforce, but also how do we engage with the current manufacturing system if they're not finding us?
Yeah, so just to clarify also what Carla's piece, which she's updating on, is the talent pipeline management collaboration with VMEC on just developing essentially this career pathway, like what this talent pipeline looks like.
Yep.
And then our discussions today will be about starting that marketing campaign / manufacturing month. Which segues very nicely into our first topic. We're going to go a little out of order in that we're going to talk about manufacturing month first. So Abby, I don't know if you want to pull up the slides for discussion. Given also, just while she's doing that, given the fact that me leaving leaves us down a staff member for probably at least a month. What we're thinking for manufacturing month, so we have our milestone that's essentially every year in October, we host an annual event in coordination with VMEC for manufacturing month that highlights innovative work in Vermont's manufacturing sector. What we think is most appropriate for this year, given it's our first year as a committee, and as well as I mentioned, Abby's capacity right now managing 10 other committees in the board, is doing a coordinated effort to promote what's happening in manufacturing month. So I see the start of it being the governor's proclamation for manufacturing month and any events attending around that. But then I was thinking, kind of getting almost like a calendar of all of the different events that are going on around the state, making some like graphics, some designs, and pushing that out through email, through social media, through even some of the governor's remarks or events, having, us and everyone's different kind of sphere of influence and memberships, like promoting these different types of events, and we can, brand it so it's our committee. But I'm thinking, obviously, we could attend or help with an event that's already happening, but I feel like for the first October, we were thinking more of just like a push about all the different things that are happening throughout the month, and highlighting all the different things that are happening throughout the month, as well as doing like a weekly kind of like manufacturer of the day, or and highlighting different manufacturers, or like highlighting the generator, doing different things like that that are kind of social promotional about the different types of businesses and different types of individuals that are in the manufacturing sphere. So it would be not us actually hosting event for the first year, but just getting our feet in the door with all the different events. And then that would be like a next year we could do like a bigger thing. But before Abby and I move forward and kind of curating that, we wanted to talk to you all about that if that's a direction you're comfortable with. And also just in the beginning, kind of get if there's any, you don't need to do it off like in this meeting, but send us kind of like if you know of things that are already happening, sending those to us as well, and we'll start to reach out to different entities to get kind of like create like a calendar that we could share with you all, and kind of like a pitch on how we would communicate this stuff. But I'll pause for initial thoughts from folks.
One of my super initial thoughts is whether or not, it would be great if there was either like some sort of form to fill out to send this information, so everyone's giving the same kind of information, and or like some shared spreadsheet that we could populate and then also be able to see ourselves. But that might help Abby in this time without Tori.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because we could do it both. Like we could have it so that the form populates the spreadsheet, so that like you don't have to go in and fill you can just edit and add in the spreadsheet as well. But then everyone sees it.
So VMEC, I was going to let you guys know this, but Manufacturing Month, VMEC has a connection to Manufacturing Day or Month already. And so I was, it connects to manufacturing institutes, so the regional and other national events, right? And how to do one, things like that on the national level, right? I love the idea of doing. So there's a form there, I guess, to add your event to the national, Vermont to the regional to the national. It's all in there. I can send that. It's basically, yeah. So I can do that. I love the idea of having a state, the State Workforce Development Board or whatever, also promoting it in some way, and having maybe, like you were saying, attendance, maybe pick one, right? And let it be known that partners from the state are going to be at, or agencies are going to be at this particular event. That's already happening. I think that's what I'm hearing you say, is like you don't want to put one out there, but like let's pick one from the list that we as a committee think that would be good to be at, right? Or for you all to be at. I don't know if that makes sense. Let me take a look at this form and see if it's got what you might need. Maybe we should just check that so that you can connect to that one. I don't want to create something else that people are trying to fill out.
Yeah.
So
does it make sense?
I also just want to add, and maybe piggyback on that, if there's a form. One, though, I'm on the chamber board, and I think the chamber with their list of manufacturers could be a place where we do sort of an email inquiry, provide the form, and the form could be, do you already have an event, or would you like to establish an event? And that way we get a little feedback. I mean, that may put more work on VMAC or others that may not be ready for that given the short time frame. But I think they have a database of members that I think we could connect to. And I do think that it is definitely time to pull the RDCs in as part of coordinating some of these in local. So we just had a Franklin County meeting, and shortly thereafter, after the meeting adjourned, we were having conversations about what can we do maybe in Swanton or in Franklin County to pull something together, and the RDC has to facilitate. So I think there's a role there. So it's not all on VMAC, but the RDCs, I think, are very interested in finding ways to help given, the current workforce shortage, they're trying to find ways to help and promote. And this could fit into their wheelhouse pretty good.
Yeah, I like that idea of using the like local chambers and their kind of like networks to even just, because also even just the question might spark a organization to be like, oh, I want to host an event or I want to attend an event, so it would kind of give us some good outreach there. So I feel like that's a good idea, Monica.
Yeah.
And the
I was thinking
RDCs.
The state chamber, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, just because I'm not sure. I'm sure they
Yeah,
could
the
settle it
the
down,
only
but I was
thing
talking state.
they have sometimes been, I get why, hesitant to do sharing of like mailing lists, but I think if it came from them, like the chamber specifically, like came directly from the chamber being like manufacturing month is coming up, then I think that would be fine. But have been rightfully so that they don't want me and Abby to spam their members. So
The other
Yeah.
organization, and I don't know the connections that any of you may have, but AIV. So, and whether or not they have a role in this as well, or can bring members to the forefront for October.
okay.
What's AIV?
It's the Associated Industries of Vermont.
Okay.
Okay. So great feedback and thoughts for us to to kind of formulate and put into action. But just confirming we're okay with us moving forward with us not necessarily hosting a single event, but kind of doing more of like a broad push for events across the state and have that be the focus for the following year.
Yes, I think so. I support that.
I think that
I'm
helps, help. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I can see this, like, if there's this collection of all these events around the state, it's not singular, but we try to attend the ones that are near us or, go out. Is there a full page ad somewhere? Is there, like, what is the promotion of all these things? Is there some sort of push otherwise that we could like showcase all of these events in one spot? Is there a web page somewhere? Just
Well, I'm thinking we could do a page on our site, like just add another page since it's just like free to add a page.
Yep.
or through ACCD, whichever they want to do, and have it be like all the manufacturing months again, like events again, like have
All the
even like
events.
a calendar or a map or some type of
Yep.
like I think there's a way. It won't, obviously nothing's perfect. We could like synthesize it so that it's like click here for more info, like we can get
Yeah,
more
that's great.
engagement. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think my point that I was trying to make earlier that got a little misconstrued, but was I think if we're gonna advertise it being in one place isn't having maybe a template that can be shared within our networks, and we're all
Yeah.
having a unified template and advertising the same thing, because there is an issue where not necessarily manufacturers even know where to go, and we're missing people.
Yeah, I think we could put together, so like what we were thinking in terms of promoting, or like in the back of my mind, is it's similar to actually what internally we did during COVID, where if we had like the latest vaccine, the communication department basically put together like a whole packet of like, if you're doing a newsletter, here's a draft template with these are the graphics. If you're doing a social post, here's a draft, and we could circulate that to, like, I'm thinking that could get circulated in chambers, RDCs, manufacturers, different individuals, but then also doing our own push, but it's all kind of uniform, one voice coming out. I think that's a good point, Ashley.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we can then, that transitions us onto our other focus, which is the big mile marker is essentially we're launching a promotional campaign to, as we were talking about it before, as like the rebrand of manufacturing. And as I always say, the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And so the purpose in our strategic plan was having very tangible, clear milestones that we can hit that get us closer and closer to that goal. So the only thing that we need to do as it relates to this promotional campaign today is define our 3 core principles. how Abby and I have thought about this in terms of today's meeting is just essentially like a brainstorm in kind of using just like throwing out words where how manufacturing is perceived in Vermont today, and then transitioning into how would we like it to be perceived, and us starting to hone in on kind of like 3 core ideas or words that are our focus for manufacturing. Like when we're thinking when we want people to think of manufacturing, what do we actually want them to think? So with that, I will open it up to everyone, I guess, as just like a brainstorming exercise, and Abby and I will take notes on if you could take a poll today. You don't need to like just you throwing out words. What do you think the current perception of manufacturing or career in manufacturing in Vermont is today?
Dead end. Uneducated.
Manual labor.
It is not a trade.
What else?
Dirty,
would
dark,
say-
dangerous.
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 Yeah,
Dirty.
dirty.
Not a career, doesn't provide the benefits that what we think of careers or misconception of careers provide.
Yeah,
Do you all think-
jobs versus careers.
Do you all feel like, are you hearing this from students, from parents, from folks in the industry? Like, who do you mainly hear these negative connotations from? Also just thinking of who we need to direct this towards.
So this is really bad to say, but the dead end, I actually heard from one of our own production employees. It's an older employee, and so I think they just view manufacturing in general as a dead end, even though we have opportunities even with our own company outside of like hands-on production. So I don't know. I think it's maybe an older perception and it's been like passed down. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. I don't know how to synthesize this into one word, but I think there's a lot of younger folks who see it as like a manufacturing plant in Ohio in the 1950s.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like what I feel like a lot of kids think you're doing every day. It's just you're just doing the one thing for your whole life.
Deputy Commissioner Long likes to call it Charles Dickens.
Abby, I think one of the things that I've seen is that when I look at parents, it's typically parents that are not working in manufacturing that have this perception. So it's
Yeah.
more of the professionals that may not be aware of the modernization of manufacturing over the years. So it's not our folks or people like our older generations who are working in manufacturing. It's people who are not familiar with it and don't want their children going into manufacturing.
Parents. So there's a lot of pushback from parents. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's no doubt that you gotta be talking to the parents.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like piggybacking on that, like the huge push that everyone has to go to college to get like a degree, and like, no offense, Abby, because law is important, but like law, be a doctor, be like this and that. There isn't a push to learn skills. Well, we have engineers, like we're manufacturing, we hire engineers, so they don't understand that like you can be an engineer and work in a manufacturing company. I think they have this limited view of what's involved in manufacturing, in modern manufacturing.
Yeah.
If you look
Yeah.
at the CTE centers, the trade courses, carpentry, welding, plumbing, electrician, are all waiting lists to get in. But if you look at just the advanced manufacturing, the manufacturing programs are so underpopulated And that's dream driven, I think, from the perception from the parents. That if the child says, I don't want to go to college, the immediate answer is, you gotta go to a trade, you gotta become a tradesman, right?
Mhm.
And they don't consider that manufacturing is really a part of that group.
Mhm.
A misconception of what a good job is, providing, many people harp on benefits. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of our manufacturers, not necessarily the smaller ones, but some of the mid to larger ones can provide the benefits that
Yeah.
being an independent contractor can't provide.
That's correct.
Yeah. I would say something about the culture. I do know I have a couple people that have come to work at Generator, and we're happy to leave a certain culture, where there's like people yelling at each other. Just sort of I think it's a misunderstanding of the manufacturing workspace culture, essentially.
Yeah, so that's an interesting piece there, right? It's loud, right? The perception that the environment is loud, and I think it can be. It could also
Mhm.
not be loud, right? Be very quiet.
Yeah.
So if it's loud, you might seem like you're yelling at each other, even though you just need to be raising your voice to be heard.
Well, different type of yelling, like the fuck off kind of thing. Sorry, excuse the French, but just the company workspace culture and how people treat each other. And I think there's it's even just the same as like the dirty, the loud, all of that. There's I think we're all saying the same thing about what is misunderstood these days about those spaces.
Yeah.
Or-
Repetitive is often
Yep.
comes up too, that it's repetitive.
You don't need an education. That's just pushing a button and not quite understanding.
Yeah.
So then transitioning, I think, to the positive side, I guess. If we were like in a perfect world, change the culture tomorrow, what do we wish? Like what would our ideal world, what would we wish people when they're thinking manufacturing, what are they thinking?
I wish they would think about my company. I work for Chroma Technology, and we have an amazing company. We're clean, we're fun, we provide great benefits, we educate our employees. Like, I wish that they would, I wish that when they think about manufacturing, they think of companies like mine.
What was that company, Sarah?
Chroma Technology.
Okay,
Thanks,
Chroma.
no, I'm from Walpole, so right across the river.
Nice. I drive through there every day. I live in southern New Hampshire.
Yeah, I don't know if it's helpful to see a mind map.
One thing we've been talking about at Generator is not replacing the word fabrication or manufacturing or anything, but just the concept of fabrication, because people do get really excited about fabricating, and it kind of brings in that like there's a sense of creativity or like a trying to figure it out. A little bit of instead of dumbing it down to pushing a button, it's more of like you get to be a person that can think about how this is going to be done. And to play test or product test or,
Problem solving.
Problem solving. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that. And I like creativity. I was thinking like, I'm like just jotting down some of the keywords from folks. So like innovative as well is one of those things, or like exciting. You're part of some innovative and exciting things.
And high tech. Not all manufacturers are low technology. Like every manufacturing position we have, you have to use a computer. Like it's not all hands-on.
Right.
Some manufacturing's hands-on, and that's okay too, but there's a variety.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And advanced manufacturing, it's interesting what you were saying about not that there isn't a waiting list for advanced manufacturing. And I often think that might be a misunderstanding of what advanced manufacturing is.
Big time.
Yeah.
Does
Even
the
with
person need to be advanced? Do they, or is it the machinery that's advanced? Like, I think there's like, some people stop at this barricade of some of these words.
Yeah, we wrestle with the same terminology here at the museum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I need to
Well-
come to the museum. Putting that on my list.
You're all welcome.
How
I
do
don't
you
know if
all how do you all feel about the phrasing modern manufacturing? Does that isolate anyone or bring up any bad connotations, or is that also just getting into the weeds of, well, what is modern?
As soon as you said it, I liked it. I feel like we could play with that a little more, but I like it, shifts it a little bit. It brings it out of what we were just saying, the old, you know. I do think it's us, our age, beyond a certain age that has this connotation, which are the parents, right? And I do think it's shifting, and I think yeah, modern's a good start.
What else?
I'm
do you
wondering,
want? Oh, go ahead.
I'm just wondering one thing. There was once upon a time when I was looking for a gig and I was thinking graphic design and that kind of thing, I was looking at, there's a company, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a teenage marketing firm, a kids marketing firm. And I think they're in Burlington. I'm gonna look them up. But just thinking like, you know,
Fuse,
Muse.
Fuse, Fuse.
Oh, Fuse, yes. I'm just also thinking like, you know, it's summer now, so it's a little bit more challenging for us, but you know, we could take a poll or some surveys from people that are not our age, you know.
Yeah,
Just
I'm just
thinking out
popping
of
some
tech.
things up that we've been doing here, so. Ideas around using inclusive language of all these people that, you know, are you makers, are you craft people, handmade trades, manufacturing?
Mhm.
I didn't, recognizing the value chain includes others than just the operations or production, right? It includes logistics and marketing and sales, procurement, HR. Only 50% of the jobs in manufacturing are actually production, right? On average.
Yeah, and I think another enticing scenario is Vermont made. Like a lot of people are proud to be in Vermont, proud of their state, and thinking about just about made in Vermont.
Mhm.
Yeah. What I'm kind of sensing are some themes. I feel like career growth. Like there's something to be said about, like I think there's a misconception about like what type of life you could have if you're a manufacturer. I'm thinking both like just in terms of schedule, but also in terms of money, like for younger folks.
Absolutely.
And then the type of work that you're doing, I think people are very kind of like, you know, the setting that it's in, the environment that you're in. But then I think the third piece is almost like the impact of your work. Like, you know, are you just a person who's doing that one? And again, like this exists, but like the one repetitive task all day long, or are you like designing, you know, in a CNC machine, doing some type of, you know, cutting of something cool or whatever, or you're problem solving, or you're like kind of, I think Meg was saying earlier, like you're actually creative or you're problem solving or you're doing different types of things. So I feel like those are kind of the three bigger themes I'm starting to hear come through. Is there any other things or other thoughts that are coming to mind?
I think the career development path is really key because a lot of the manufacturers I've talked with are just developing career pathways internally and providing that training, and with, you know, providing educational opportunities, providing a pathway to to become either an engineer or an advanced technician. That it's not just, it's one of the few careers that I actually think has a clear, misunderstood but clear pathway to actually a really high paying job.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the few careers that have multiple channels or multiple paths to it that all lead to the same thing. They all lead to good paying jobs and opportunities, right? Whether
Yeah.
you're college bound or you're not college bound. You know, if you're standing in one place, you can make two choices right off the beginning, and both of them will bring you back to a good paying career.
And you'll probably make more than your peer that went to college.
Yeah, or
Well,
like
but
starting
within,
out.
within the yeah, you're right. But
Yeah.
within the manufacturing world,
Yeah.
I mean, you could be an engineer, you could be a buyer, you can
Yep.
be, you know, documentation person, quality,
I think
or you
that's
can be
where
a
the,
machine operator, process engineer. You know, it's just gives you all both directions that you can go in, and I think that's one of the things that makes manufacturing so exciting, and so much potential for young people today. Is that this two
exciting and
paths.
potential. I mean, those, as
Yeah.
you were just talking, Steve and Ashley, I was just thinking, it is exciting. It's super exciting. And I think one of the things is we have to turn these buildings inside out for our community.
yes,
And
yes,
like,
yes, yes.
who's gone to Ben and Jerry's to go see that, plant, right? So many people. And then, but who's gone into, Chroma Technology or these other places? I think even manufacturing day could just be asking these places to open their doors and do tours. And it's just like, everybody does tours, and it's like going to visit colleges,
Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah,
have
that's one
open,
of the outreaches that we're working on for the museum is with some of the local manufacturers. Can we say, you know, if we send people there on Tuesday and Thursday afternoon from 1 to 3, would you be willing to open your doors for a tour?
Mhm. Yeah.
And
We'll
we
be
were
open to
starting
the-
to look it down, reach out to people like, Hypotherm and Fuji and, within our area, within a 15-minute ride or so from our area.
Yeah.
We'll be open this manufacturing day to the public. Last year was like
Nice.
our internal, like we did our internal thing to
Yeah.
see how it go. And this year we are planning on being open.
And this is
Oh, that's
way
great.
farther down the road, Meg, but I really like the idea of like the kind of like inside out, like if we could do videos where it's, there's not a DoD contract, like really cool videos of what it could look like in an innovation. I think
Yeah.
Beta does a great job at that. Something
Yeah.
similar to that style of like really showing what it could look like. I mean, and I'm sure many manufacturers would be happy to participate to highlight, because I'm sure they face the same thing, Sarah, where they're like, I would love my company to be what like we're doing all the right things. So I think that's just something to file in I'll make sure it's filed in our notes as like an idea just kind of floating around, because I think that would be a cool direction to go. Definitely something not as formal, but we could do during manufacturing month is like start to really highlight employers and what they're doing, what the different entities are doing, stuff that the generator's doing, like bringing some of that as a part of the collateral to kind of,
Yes, I think
filter in the events.
I think your point, Tori, is great. If we think about what we can do each time, whether it's, let's just call it manufacturing month, but each day, and have it with the mindset that we're going to reuse that. If it comes
Yes.
out great, we're going to reuse that. So if we're having a live event like at Chroma, can we get, and that's where like I think we can use the state or whatever marketing idea is there. We have things happening every day. And
We have
VMX
a
out there-
great video guy who actually works for the Agency of Agriculture, but he's like really good. He used to work at WCX with Anson, so he's done some amazing work. So I'm like even thinking about like, could he come and do some video around some of the days and like do a really good, like really high quality professional looking, like kind of.
that
So
would be-
also,
and
I
again,
was thinking about this earlier. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know who was speaking.
that's okay. Keep
oh.
going.
Okay. We have, and we're trying to highlight this. We're a small organization, so sometimes it's hard to get all of the ideas, of course. But this guy, Seamus, came to Generator, probably mid-20s, you know, just started working in the wood shop. Then when COVID hit, he started fabricating for the city, like all of the Santas. Instead of sitting on Santa's lap, they had a mailbox for Santa all around the town, and he CNC route, like designed and built them on the CNC router, and just kept getting little gigs. We would hire him from time to time, but he kept going through all of our trainings. And finally, he applied to Benchmark, and we supported him through all the application. We gave him reference. We did all sorts of things to help him figure out how to negotiate. And he's making the most money he's ever made in his entire life, like completely different person, huge confidence, like he was lost and now he's found. And he would love to do a video, you know? And I think so many people that I know that have come from Generator, like there's a guy at Beta who's running all of the 3D printing. He's like in charge of everything. And he also was lost at Generator and tinkering. And, you know, they pulled him from here and put him into a position, and, you know, now has like tons of confidence and is amazing and probably
Right.
making, I don't even know what, but, and I just think it's true. It's not dead end. There's so many opportunities. I mean, compared to working in a nonprofit, oh my God, you can like actually move up a ladder, get a raise, have benefits, like be supportive, use resources, so many things. Like don't go to school to be an artist. That was my dumb
Oh,
idea, you know? But we do,
Um,
I mean, even that's an interesting point of connection. Like when at Generator, we see so many types of people, and they're creative in one way or another, and they might be an artist, right? But like I have been thinking for a long time now, like I would have loved designing or going into engineer or architecture. None of that was like something that was in front of me, or that I had any of the confidence for, or I didn't know anything about it. And I think it's about flipping everything on the inside out, as I mentioned, but like really thinking through these different paths that do go there, including architecture, engineer, you know, or
mhm.
just fabricating, simply fabricating and creating.
Yeah.
Yes. So thinking, Tori, kind of connecting those things too, I think that keeping that in mind about flipping it inside out is huge, right? People don't know what's going on inside, so they will fill the gap with whatever they know, whatever they
Yep.
think is happening. They fill a vacuum.
Yeah.
You know, COVID taught us a lot of things, including when we used to do tours for manufacturing day. Instead, we did a bunch of like video tours, right? Virtual tours. And
Right.
so it could be a combination. Now we come out the other side of things and we can do a combination. So open houses, if a company's not willing or ready, if you talk with them, they could do a confined video tour, right? Which, you know, if they have a ugly hallway they don't want people to walk down, well, fine. You know, they can do a video for
Right.
now until they get the hallway fixed. It's amazing what a piece of flooring can do.
think-
Right.
I
I
think
And
wonder if
videos
we
are
also,
can-
hard.
I wonder if
Like
we
they're-
could work with VTC, perhaps, and the partners, the industry partners.
Yeah, Barry
To
couldn't
give
be
them
here
a
today,
slice
but
of
he would.
time on like any particular day, like maybe have 10 or 20 different manufacturers that get 15, 20 minutes online to demonstrate their company and careers that are available within their company. And just invite people to come to VTC or one of the CTE centers and say, from this time to this time, we're going to be showing you job opportunities from our partners, and let each company just do a video or a live feed.
like
to
a
talk
little
about it.
mini
Or-
job fair.
Yeah, it's sort of an online, but more informational, you know?
Yep.
We had a group through here that we dialed in the HR person from Timken. And that went really well. The students didn't have to go anywhere. We had them captive already, and it was really exciting. They did a nice tour, their virtual tour of their plant. And the HR guy got on and said, "Hey, this is what we got, and this is what you need to do." And that might be something that we could do for manufacturing day.
I think one thing we're also talking about the products we're actually making. Like we hear the
Yes.
names of the manufacturers, but a lot of us don't know what we're making, what they're
Mhm.
making, and then
Mhm.
and it may be something pretty obscure, but what that what they're manufacturing and what it is going into and how it affects the supply chain, to see that larger picture of like our little state where 10% of the GDP is a result of manufacturing. We are affecting the national economy, the national supply chain, and even the world. And just knowing like where our piece is and how important Vermont manufacturing is.
I would agree with that. And I also want to add all of those last words that you said, like even in supply chain, is almost like it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. Like I can imagine a young 18-year-old saying something like that. That doesn't mean anything to me. It means something to us, right? And especially as we watched COVID happen. But I think what you're talking about with the product is an awesome idea, and the impact has to be like part of the concept of the supply chain. But I think where you're going with the impact is like, what does that do? How it's like something more interpersonal that the people can connect with.
Yeah, maybe it's one tiny control that goes into a tank. And we have like the kiddo who is obsessed with tanks and Legos or something like that. And we're like, you can make this little tiny thing that basically is the key piece to a tank. And like I can just see eyes like wide open, because not understanding, like as a child you think, well, it's a tank, there's one place that builds the tank, and not necessarily understanding how many, like it's putting together a Lego that from very different parts all these pieces are coming together.
Yeah, I think that is hitting it on the head right there.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like just in the context of Beta, where it's like I care about climate change and I want to like help create the, plane of the future, or like, now I'm forgetting their name, but they're in South Burlington. They're like a great company. They do the stuff that's manufactured. It's like for like stuff that can be either really hot or really cold. I don't remember what they do, but they like work with on Logic. Yeah. So it's like, I want to do, like, I think you're right. Like getting into the product.
Yeah. It goes in the Cheeto factory. Those things go into the Cheeto factory because there's a lot of cheese dust.
Yeah.
Super cool.
And On Logic actually is a great example of a really good, like, they have like, Orange Day. They do a lot of promo on like their company culture, and they're all looking like goofballs. Are they by day? I don't know. They're probably thinking about a lot of serious stuff. But
the facility is very cool. I know they just opened a new one, but it is very like innovative and cool. So I feel like that's a good piece. I want to be cognizant of time, although this has been an exceptional discussion. For next steps, basically at our next meeting, what we need to do, what I'm going to do first, I guess, is we'll synthesize this discussion. Obviously not everyone is here, so I think it'd be probably good to kind of like reopen this up at the beginning of the next meeting, but synthesize it into kind of like the three biggest themes with some of the words we use to describe them, and start to hone in what that could look like as like a core principle of the campaign, or kind of like a core focus of the campaign for you guys to look at and for us to discuss at the next meeting. The other piece that we'll discuss at the next meeting will be any progress, obviously, that Abby and I have made, and kind of like our efforts to start this work for the manufacturing month. But we'll get into kind of like what we're going to determine success of the campaign to be. And I think that'll be also a good, that paired with kind of like what our key principles might work back and forth together, and kind of the outcomes we're hoping to achieve, because that's kind of step 1 and 2 in moving us forward. But if that sounds good to everyone, we'll get to work on kind of starting to synthesize some of these thoughts and putting it into what we think are some actionable next steps. Great. All right, well, that was a lovely discussion. This is very exciting. I am, as I said, very sad, bittersweet about leaving. I absolutely love doing all this work, but Abby is more than capable to keep shepherding us forward. So I look forward to watching from afar everything that's going on.
Come back to Vermont, Tori.
I intend to.
Okay. Someday I'll text you and say promise.
You're gonna sign a contract.
Yeah,
I will, and then I can count myself as a net new worker.
Yeah.
I don't know, that didn't really pass.
That's true. Great. All right. Well, thank you all.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
Tori.
Have a great
Thank you.
day.
See you soon.
Nice seeing you, some of you that I've only spoken to on the phone.
Nice to
So,
see you,
Yes.
Steve.
it's all
See you
good.
soon.